Jesus Christ is the Saviour. Not only is he the Saviour, I believe he's the most influential person that has ever existed. I've made videos here and there talking about athletes, as I talk about sports a lot. I've also made videos talking about, just different people, entertainers, presidents at times, just entrepreneurs, a lot of the public figures in the world. And I realized I haven't actually made a video about the most influential person in the history of the world. So it's only right that I make a video about Jesus Christ, as I have made videos about Christianity here and there. So why not talk about the founder of Christianity? Just make a video dedicated to Jesus Christ. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. I believe that Jesus Christ is the most influential person in society that's ever existed. There's a lot of talk about, sometimes you hear who's got the culture, who's got the streets, things of that nature. Well, if you look at the world today, the biggest religion in the world is Christianity. Yeah, I know it's been on a decline, due to secularism, technology, but it still is the number one religion in the world. Two of the biggest holidays, Christmas and Easter. Christmas is about the birth of Jesus. Easter is about the death and resurrection of Jesus. That's influence. His teachings have helped contribute to civilization of people, bringing intact families together, making people love one another, getting close to a level of peace. His message is love your neighbor as yourself, and also loving your enemies, praying for your enemies. And my interpretation of that is not just being gullible and, letting people take advantage of you, but knowing that war and constant conflict is not the answer, and getting close to a level of being amicable is the best possible solution. And also him saying things like cast your burden onto him, wherever you're going through, have faith. That's the Saviour. That's what people should be looking onto. People have a lot of difficult times. People go through stuff, as life has its different hardships, and you can look for someone greater than yourselves and cast your burdens onto him. And also knowing that this individual suffered as well. He was persecuted by his own people. He was crucified. Even given the option of crucifying him or a criminal, his own people chose the criminal. So sometimes you may be going through a very hard time. You might think, oh, why me? Just also gaining inspiration that even the greatest individual went through something that was extremely hard, difficult, dying for the sins of everyone. So yeah, I believe this is the greatest person that's ever walked on earth. I believe human beings, what I see online and even in real life is that people are looking for someone to praise. People are looking for something to devote themselves to. People thought with removing religion, people won't worship anything, but that's not the case. People will always look for something to devote themselves, worship themselves to. So why not worship somebody worthy of worship, rather than, people who are flawed human beings. They may be exceptional at something, but because of them being flawed, they can let you down. But this is somebody that won't let you down. So why not worship the greatest individual? And why I think this is the greatest individual is because one of the reasons is because not only did his message, did he preach a good message, he lived, his actions were also good. You can't really find any real immoral things that he was committing during his life. What can you actually catch him out with? There's that, in the temple when he wasn't happy with what was going on, but that was because he felt they were violating the temple. So he even shows at times, sometimes you need to put your foot down in a situation, be stern, where you feel like something immoral or something that's not right is taking place. He showed us how to, deal with people that we don't agree with, or feel like they're immoral. You know, there's that story of the prostitute, and they wanted to stone the prostitute, but Jesus said, no, those that haven't sinned should cast the first stone if you haven't sinned. And also he told the prostitute to go and sin no more. So that's like a blueprint in how we deal with, you know, different sins. As human beings, we can be hypocritical. You know, we may sin in one way, but judge another person for whatever sin that they're committing. But also having the realization to know that you sin as well. But then what was also important is that he didn't just not judge the prostitute and tell her to go and continue what she was doing. He said, go and sin no more. So that's like a blueprint. And also doing more with less. You know, this is the greatest individual. He could have come to earth living in luxury, being in the best possible position, but he lived a pretty like humble life and was doing exceptional things with the facilities that he had. You know, feeding 5,000 people with like 5 loaves of bread, you know, turning water into wine, walking on water, healing the sick, raising the dead. Did so many exceptional things with, he didn't have the greatest facilities, but he was still able to do exceptional things. So yeah, if there's anybody that's worthy of worship through what their message was in the world, their influence, and how they actually lived their lives, I think it's Jesus Christ. And I don't even think he has a rival. There's no one close, you know. He's one of one. You know, even how he came into the earth, you know, people say, how can a virgin give birth? But I don't think it's meant for us to understand, because nobody is on that level. And at times as humans, we want to understand everything. You know, curiosity is good, but at the same time, there are things that are greater than us. And of course, the greatest person is not going to arrive the same way all of us did. So yeah, that's how I see that. And yeah, just the things that he was doing and his influence, like I said, with, you know, the biggest religion, a religion that has helped civilize a lot of people, a religion where people have given testimonies with how it has improved them through difficult times, changed them as people. You know, they were living a certain way, and then through this religion, Christianity, they've been able to live more moral lives and have a better conscience. You know, this is Jesus' influence. And he's also telling people to evangelize as well, spread the gospel. You know, he had 12 disciples, and he was trying to spread the gospel. And he told them, you know, when he resurrected, to continue to spread the gospel. So this is what a lot of Christians do really well, and more power to them. You know, this is my way of doing that, because I'm just not the most sociable person. I think it's easier for me to do this online, but I will try more in real life here and there. But more about Jesus, you know, his actions on earth, just his whole story. You know, this is somebody who pretty relatively not the longest life. In 33 years, what he was able to accomplish. You know, even the way the world is now, the year 2026, you know, things like AD and then BC, before Christ, a lot of this is shaped on Jesus. So, you know, you hear sometimes of who's got the culture, who's got the streets, who's got this, who's got that, who can, you know, who has influence here. I don't think anyone is close to Jesus. Nobody, not even debatable, with his influence on earth. Not only with his popularity. I mean, you'd be hard to find anybody who doesn't know about Jesus Christ, who hasn't heard the name. And also the way he lived his life and his preachings is very important, because, you know, it's one thing to preach, but then it's another thing to actually live, which is very difficult. You know, some of the things that he was able to accomplish, he too had, you know, temptation from the devil. The fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, you know, there was a temptation there. And with that, I believe sometimes you can take that as inspiration, that sometimes you might feel tempted, you might feel by different things in the world. There's a lot of temptation, but just always having the mindset, you know, in church, they'll say things like, what would Jesus do? him being the blueprint, setting the standard. You're never going to be on his level completely. You're going to slip up here and there, but just look, having somebody as guidance and the motivation and the blueprint to how you live your life. The message is loving your neighbor, loving your enemy, praying for your enemy, just having love in your heart, for the most part, in this life. And also, just how he held people accountable. There was a group of people who they were too pompous, felt they were too enlightened for their own goods, judgmental, the Pharisees, and he held them accountable. He said unpopular things, which got him into a situation where he was being crucified. But that's maybe sometimes in life, just because something is the consensus, some people, they don't want to speak the truth. But just know that the greatest person alive was brave and bold to stand on his convictions. But there's a balance that you need to have with that, because yes, we are all created in the image of God, and we should all be trying to emulate that to an extent. We're all gods, with a small g, but we shouldn't reach the extreme end where we start to think we are God and we know everything. That's why I said with things like the Immaculate Conception, these things are not for us to understand. Some things are greater than us. And just not reaching a stage where you're too narcissistic, inconsiderate of other people. You think you're the greatest thing alive, but also having a confidence within yourself. From the extreme end, people like the most evil dictators, they probably reached a stage where they thought they were God and were committing, terrible acts. So not reaching that level, but also having a level of you are born in God's image, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. All the beautiful stuff it says in the Bible. But there's a balance between confidence and arrogance that, people should try to be less of too arrogant, but have the confidence within yourself. And just knowing that there's something greater than yourself, and that you're not the greatest person. You are flawed, and another person may be exceptional at something. There's a lot of exceptional people in this world in different things. Like I said, I've made videos about, whether it's the entrepreneurs, the presidents, the athletes, the entertainers, even your family, somebody in your family, somebody in close proximity to you, your friend. People do exceptional things, and there's nothing wrong with complimenting and giving people credit. But when it reaches a stage of too much devotion, too much praise and worship, I believe no one's worthy of that worship. The only person that's worthy of worship is Jesus Christ. And with things like addictions, this is very difficult in this world. People can be addicted to many different things. I saw a video on social media, and I thought it makes a lot of sense. You see, quotes here and there that addiction is your devoting yourself to the wrong God. You're distracting yourself because you don't have purpose, so you're distracting. Or you're just devoting yourself to something. And it's a clear example that human beings are capable of devoting themselves to something. So why not devote yourself to something more meaningful, something greater than yourself? Jesus Christ, the Saviour, the person with the most influence, the person who died for the sins of humanity, the person who said you should cast your burdens onto him. If people talk about quotes and aura, and who's got more aura than Jesus? I mean, look at some of the quotes that he was saying. Some of the things that he was doing. This is the only person worthy of worship. This is the only person where people should be devoted to, fully devoted, and worship. You shouldn't worship false idols. You shouldn't worship flawed people. You can compliment them, like I said. You can give people credit, but just realize that human beings are flawed, and they will let you down because they are flawed. But there's a flawless person, and that was Jesus Christ. With how he lived and the message that he spread out, and that he's the Savior of the world. He's the most influential person in history, and I thought it made sense to make a video just dedicated to Jesus Christ, as I've made videos on a lot of individuals. I made videos about Christianity before. Yeah, I've talked about Jesus here and there. I've mentioned that he's the Savior, but I haven't actually made a video dedicated to Jesus Christ. So why not make a video just dedicate to the Savior of the world, the most influential person, the person with the best message, and yeah, the greatest person that has ever existed, Jesus Christ.